I guess I got this idea. So there was the episode with Christopher Lloyd and Jack Black. Let's come up with puns for what that episode title should have been. Like I'll go first. You could call it Hack to the Future.
Back to the Mandalorian.
About Taxi in Star Wars.
How about this is not the greatest episode ever. This is just a tribute.
I
How about
agree.
School of Rock in Star Wars?
You guys are terrible at this.
Oh man, well, you put me on the spot.
I gave you some you could have used.
Hey, you think I could remember all those? You told me I'm like right when I got in. Okay?
That's true.
Cut me some slack.
This is just where I excel. Dad jokes. Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that if we had a nickel for every time Moff Gideon showed up at the second to last episode of the season, only be defeated in the final season, we'd have two nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's pretty weird that it's happened twice. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Jeff.
And that was the longest one-liner joke I think we've had on this show.
Way to go.
Took a while to get there, but we got there.
Applause.
And we have our third six-time guest here, six-time Emmy-nominated Jeff Tharp. He is back, and super excited to have Jeff on this show because whenever we talk about Star Wars, it's like we have to have the biggest Star Wars fan I know.
Well, correction. Actually, Jeff's only the second six-timer, I believe. I believe it's only him and Paul. I think Terrence is at 5. So Jeff is now our second most frequent guest.
Wow.
Nice. So if you've got a 4-letter name, you're going to get to the 6 mark. That's how it goes. Hey, real quick, before we get into this, I want to get here right away. I'm super excited for this because you just made a post about someone who's in season 3 and a project you're working on with R4D5. And so I loved seeing that droid back, and he got a little bit of redemption here, but you had your other plans for a redemption arc for R4D5. Can you share about that real quick?
I'm not going to share everything that happens,
No.
but the story goes that I'll explain really quick. There's a Kenner action figure of R5D4 in the 90s, and he split open and he fired this missile and he had all these like guns on him. And even as a kid, I thought it was ridiculous. And I was participating in it was leading up to Rogue One, so it's just 2016. There was a short film contest and you had to show their merchandise in it. And while I was looking at all my action figures, I saw R5 and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I've always thought it was ridiculous. And then a light bulb went off and then I thought of this short. So the final shot in my short film is the idea I had, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I will tell you that in A New Hope, originally it's going to be C-3PO and R5D4 bought by Uncle Ben, and then R5D4's motivator blows. And Luke famously says this R2 unit has a bad motivator. And then they buy R2D2 instead. So my short film picks up after the Jawas take R5, put him back in the sandcollar, and drive away. And that's where my movie begins.
Nice.
So.
And when you get it done, will you post it on a spot to be able to see it, or is that just gonna be like, yeah, that's my own thing?
Oh no, I'll absolutely post it. Right. I've been working on it off and on for like 6 years now. So, and there's a lot of people over the years that have lent their voice talent. A lot of people over the years that have just been interested in it, and I just want to show it for everybody. It's stop motion animation for those who don't know.
And thanks for not correcting me because apparently I saying R4D5 and it's R5D4.
I have no idea. I didn't catch it.
I think I was.
So you love Star Wars and stop motion animation. So basically, you're the real life Ben Wyatt.
I am, and we actually, my wife and I have dubbed it Claymation whenever I work now, because that's what he says, shorthand. He's like, my Claymation. I compared it to Avatar.
And 5 seconds of footage that took me 2 weeks.
Yeah, it takes a long time, man. I worked a shot over the weekend, 8 hours for one shot. Yeah, not every shot will take that long. This one was especially difficult, and the problem with it that made it even more heartbreaking, no one will know how difficult it was. It's not one of those shots where you're like, wow, but it took me 8 hours to do.
It's kind of
Well,
like it's kind of like on Pixar when they're working on Finding Nemo, and John Lasseter would like have these artists that would just be doing the background like kelp and stuff that you wouldn't pay any attention to. He's like, if anyone is noticing what you're doing, you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly.
What were you gonna say, Brian?
Oh, so this weekend, I managed to throw a bucket of water on an 11-year-old boy, and that only took me like 2 seconds to do. So,
I gotta say, as far as feats, that's quite the feat, Brian.
Yeah,
if I may be so bold.
If you're out noticing some issues with Brian's audio, he's just been, unfortunately, the internet went out and he's on his phone and it's not the best quality, but he put on sunglasses since we've started, and I think that's his attempt to make this work perfectly.
He is styling and profiling.
Well, now I'm more mobile because I'm not sitting at my normal recording spot. So like I can go and I can distract you guys from talking about the Mandalorian.
I want one of us to get like on a long diatribe here, and for you just to be in the background doing windmill kicks or something like that. Well, let's get into Mandalorian because as much as we are great, I think people are here to hear us talk about a great show. I really love the Mandalorian series. First season was not bad, but second season and third season they're straight up bangers for me, and I love both of them.
Yeah.
I'm getting this feeling, Brian, you're not agreeing. Is that correct?
Well, are you getting that feeling because I told you beforehand and you kind of over it a little bit?
No, I was using the Force.
No, I mean, okay, it's a good show. I'm definitely not as into it as both of you are. This season especially, it's just like, okay, I'm just going to summarize some of my issues with it. They're like, Din Djarin, you took your helmet off. You have to be banished unless you go bathe in magic water. Then Bo-Katan could be like, I just don't want to wear a helmet. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And then she goes in the water and she sees this magic creature monster thing. And she's like, hey, I thought it was fake, but I saw it. They're like, okay, that's cool. And nothing came of that. And then the whole episode about this doctor guy and his cloning. And then we'd never see him again. And like the Grogu is barely in it. It's just, I don't know. That was kind of my issues on that.
I see what you're saying. However, you're wrong. And no, a lot of those threads though started in season 1. So,
Okay.
I can understand pieces of this, but here's something that I want to bring to you, Brian, that when we watch Andor, you're like, oh, this show is so slow. And then there's like this space battle like partway through, and you're like, why did it take him so long for this space battle? In episode 1, we had an awesome space battle. I loved that. Was true. So well shot and great cool action. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be more Brian speed this season. There is a lot more action in this than we saw in Andor.
There was. I like this better than Andor.
Laundry to this movie, to this show. Yes. Last time you were folding laundry when you're watching Andor.
The main thing, that's true. I remember you were saying that. Okay, but can you explain to the helmet thing why it's like such a big deal that he had to go and like be unbanished for taking off his helmet, and then she can just be like, I don't want to wear a helmet, and they're like, okay, that's fine.
All right. So, well, they did explain why when the armorer before we get going, I absolutely loved this season. I thought it was amazing. My only beef was really with the whole Lizzo Jack Black thing, but it was like I actually enjoyed the sleuthing aspect of that episode. We can get into it later. I just wanted to say that before I, read the top.
I like that episode. I
liked the episode. I just didn't like the Lizzo Jack Black thing. We can get into it because I have reasons. But but to answer your question, Brian, the armorer and Mando Din's their covert of Mandalorians actually adhere to the ancient ways of Mandalore. So if you've ever played, for any of the people out there listening, have ever played Knights of the Old Republic, which was a fantastic game, those Mandalorians adhere to the ancient ways and they do not take their helmets off. So they are kind of trying to restore the ancient ways of Mandalore. And you see throughout the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, this diluted sect of Mandalorians. and they're too cross-pollinated with other cultures and too welcoming to other cultures, and as a result have they believe it's weakened them. So it allowed them to get taken over by Imperials. You see that Moff Gideon was able to best them and play too much to the, Bo-Katan's compassion towards her people, all of that stuff. So, but in regards to Bo-Katan, her being like, okay, yeah, you can. I mean, she says like you taking off your helmet. We recognize that we're looked at as zealots for keeping our helmets on, but you can take your helmet off, and you can actually reach the other Mandalorians who are taking their helmets off, and they won't write you off as a kook because you have joined our ranks. So you're the bridge. You see what I'm saying? The bridge.
Okay. So it's like diplomacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the other part of it too is that what I pulled from it, like, because they did explain it that way, but I thought the underlying thing, the unspoken thing, was a little bit of a class system with Din Djarin because he's not of the bloodline. And
Right.
so they were looking for reasons as well. As I kind of got that from the different seasons.
Yeah, Bo-Katan is a pure blood. I mean, she can trace her lineage back.
And not just that, but she's like royalty pure blood. Whereas Din Djarin's just some filthy commoner with
some pauper.
Exactly. And so they were looking for reasons to exclude him, but looking for reasons to include Bo-Katan, because she didn't even come in and ask to be made Mandalorian. She happened to be bathing in the waters to save Jin, but she didn't want to be a part of this Mandalorian coven. But they're still saying, "Hey, we'll accept you because of what you did. We'll accept you."
Yeah, you didn't take your helmet off, and then she's looking for a place to belong. And so then she's like, all right, I'll stick around. And then they saw that she was the real deal, especially in that one episode where she leads the rescue mission to save that one dude's
son from the dragon, right?
Yeah.
Which, I did like
that's my
the one
comment.
Where they're like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's my comment. It's not like it's a negative, but at some point, did someone stop a screenwriter because he's like, they're all hanging out by this water, and then a giant thing attacks them. Like, how many times does that happen in this season?
Dude, I'm telling you though, man, the staple of Mandalorians, if you go back and you read like, the lore, is them fighting giant monsters all the time. So it's how they test their mettle,
Which is fine, but then you look at it from a logic side, like, maybe you guys just need to move.
Yeah. Hey, maybe find a different planet. Yeah.
This happens a lot. You might get in a better neighborhood.
Yeah.
All right, what were you saying, Brian?
I did like they finally addressed something that I've been wondering, like, how do you eat? And they're like, yeah, you just go somewhere and be private, and then you take your helmet off and eat. Like, even it's so simple, but like I was wondering about that the entire first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Hey, not every lore drop is going to be rich and full of gold here. It's just they just go somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they don't look at each other.
Yeah.
I got to say, since we're talking about Bo-Katan, that she was probably my favorite arc of this season. I really enjoyed going from the forced solitary and kind of the moping that she was doing at the beginning, forced into helping, and then finding a spot that she belonged and walking and stepping into a greater purpose and a greater calling. I thought that was high quality.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And her leading the charge, at the end with the Darksaber, R.A.P. Darksaber. And yeah, I thought that was great. Super cool. And now I got to say though, my new favorite Mandalorian is Axe Woves, that dude at the end who like flies up into space, gets in the shuttle, doesn't miss a beat, tells everyone to get out, flies the ship down into the base and flies out. He was awesome.
Was that the guy that was like the main head of that other Mandalorian sect that we saw? Okay.
Yeah, and he was in the second season when they introduced Bo-Katan. And her, like, she has like 2 other Mandalorians with her. He's one of them in that too.
Nice.
Love it.
So the other storyline, as dumb of a character arc as this is actually, I really liked R5's D4's arc.
What
like
is it? I said, dumb? Come on.
Well, I mean, it's dumb in the fact that it's like, with Grogu, they don't quite know what to do because he can't talk. But yet you have a droid who also can't talk. Yet he got a really good arc. So I
Yeah.
think they're needing to try and figure out. It was good that they gave Grogu at least like the talking. I forget the robot's name, but being able to say yes and no.
IG-11.
Thank you. At
Yeah.
least being able to give him his own mech suit,
Yeah, the
pretty
mech
much.
suit. I loved it.
Yeah.
That thing needed some guns though, and we called it a good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they. My other complaint about this season just was the scene of watching the puppet bounce around in the action sequence with the Predator guards, who I love the design of them, and I always
Uh-huh.
have. But just
Uh-huh.
watching a puppet bounce around, I'm like,
I loved it,
maybe needed
dude.
some CGI on this.
I loved it, man. I loved the charm and the clunkiness. Like I love that they've fully embraced it.
Yeah.
I think they were going for Yoda in episode 2 vibes.
Yeah. Except that was CGI. So, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the flipping and bouncing around.
And I think I had a similar reaction actually with the CGI Yoda, and here I am now being like, maybe they should have done CGI for the action. I'm like, well,
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just like grass is greener on the other side, Matt.
it's not going to look right no matter what. He's
Right.
he's a 3 foot tall creature jumping
Yeah,
around.
very tiny. Yeah, very wee. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, what was something that you did like about this season? Was there any like big arc overall, or is it just like you weren't caring as much, so it was hard to follow any arc?
No, I liked overall. I mean, I did like the kind of the budding like friendship or like a respect between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. Like I liked that, and like their dual face off against Moff Gideon was really cool. It's just there's a lot of individual things. And my thing with Star Wars shows just like I feel like at this point they're just like, and then this character gets their own show, and then this character gets their own show, and that's just like they're even if they're done well, it just seems like you know it just seems like it might be getting to be a bit much. But maybe you guys don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, like I'm not
It's a good show though.
right. Yeah, I mean, for me, it just depends.
Yeah.
I think that, like, I mean, in regards to like Andor, for example, everyone really, a lot of people, I would say the majority of people, fans really liked Rogue One. So to me, it made sense for them to give. That's the only way you can give more because, spoiler alert for those who have not seen Rogue One. But why are you listening to this if you haven't seen Rogue One? Everybody dies, and so you can't make a sequel. I mean, the sequel is A New Hope. I mean, you could look at it that way, but in terms of those characters and seeing the formation of that sacrifice, willing to make a sacrifice like that, makes sense. I'm totally cool. And at first, okay, I will admit, at first, after seeing the final episode of this season, I was a little bummed that there wasn't a big reveal of any kind at first. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I like that this kind of completed a 3-season arc of something, and it ended happily ever after, air quotations, because obviously he's coming back, and they're going to really open this up with Ahsoka and the Skeleton Crew show, with Thrawn being the new big bad. They talk about him in this season, second to last episode, I think. Yep. So to me, the more I sat with it, the more I was like, no, it's good. Like it's right the way it is, you know, because obviously in the first season they had that big reveal of Moff Gideon has the Darksaber, and you're like, what? And then the end of season 2, you had Luke Skywalker, you know, show up. So I mean, in regards to that, I think that's what initially I just had begun to expect that and realize like, oh, you know, like it's okay that there wasn't a big, it was more about the Mandalorians taking Mandalore back. And so the more I thought about it, the more I sat on it and digested it, I was like, nah, I loved it. It reminded me of like things I would have imagined playing with my action figures as a kid. So loved it.
Yeah, it's a good show, and I'm not trying to say it's not. Just sometimes, because I know that I'm not as into it as you guys. Sometimes it's fun to lean into it and be like the villain of the podcast. So that's kind of what I'm leaning into. Just for
be
fun.
A troll. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you, sir?
Also, but I can't. Like if I legitimately hated it, I would tell you. But like I don't. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It was interesting. It did hold my attention. It's just like I might not have watched it so quickly if it weren't for the podcast. To be honest,
Sure.
I've been watching through the Goldbergs and so I've been watching that instead. By the way,
Yeah.
Matt, we're doing a Goldberg episode eventually.
Great. I loved Goldberg's.
Yeah.
Um,
So what's interesting though about this season, and I'm kind of finding out this information, is originally they were going to do a show called Rangers of the New Republic, and it was going to star Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune. And obviously she got canceled by Disney. And recently it's interesting because Jon Favreau's come out talking about how displeased he was with how she was treated and all that stuff. Like, good job, Jon Favreau. But um the from what I gather, because it was a weird, like with Book of Boba Fett, there was those 2 episodes with Mando, actually technically 3 if you count the last episode as well, and they felt really out of place for the show. And then there was like the story thread of Carson Teva, who's that Asian pilot who's like flying around and trying to get Mando to help him fight the pirates and stuff. Great character, love him.
Me too.
And I, from what I gather, all of those story threads between Book of Boba Fett and then that story thread, they had to kind of tie things back into season 3, and they had to like spread out season 3, so like resolve the whole Luke thing. Which I thought was weird because not everybody watched Book of Boba Fett. And so like, even like people that I know that are more casual fans, I was like, don't watch Mandalorian 3. Watch these 3 episodes first, then go and watch it, because you're going to be really confused that he goes off with Luke Skywalker and then all of a sudden he's back with Din, you know?
Yeah.
So
it was like Mandalorian 2.5.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, they were great episodes, but I was talking to my wife and I was saying, these feel like Mandalorian season 3 episodes 1 and 2. Like, that's what it felt like. Great episodes.
And I think if they would have included those, I think the pacing would have felt off. If that instead, it would have somehow made its way from Book of Boba Fett into Mandalorian. I think that the 8 episodes that they had, I think the pacing was just right on and worked really well.
Well, but if you had, I think actually if they were still doing Rangers of the New Republic, I don't think the pacing would have been off. I think for some people, this was like an 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I think it would have pushed it up a lot higher if they could have charted those episodes, and you could have seen the full progression of them being apart and then being reunited and all that stuff. But you'd have to tell it in a different way, obviously, because the whole Book of Boba Fett conflict on Tatooine, that was kind of part of their reunion. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
I think the hardcore fans are probably going to be watching Boba Fett anyways. It's probably what they're counting on.
Yeah.
See, and I do like, though, like these Star Wars stories that, because I think, Brian, you didn't like this, but I liked it. The example of the episode with Dr. Pershing, where they kind of take this detour from the action, and I don't think the payoff afterwards was as good as that specific episode, but in the episode I really enjoyed taking a moment, seeing how the world is, because that's really what it was, is a world building for Star Wars, and that was very interesting to me.
I like that part too, but it's like you said, they should have paid off, but he just kept talking about clones. I thought somehow that was going to pay off and kind of explain more about like Palpatine cloning himself and coming back.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's basically what they're leading to. But I would agree with you. I did enjoy that episode. I think I feel slightly different about it now, having seen the whole season. Because when it came out, I was like, well, there's clearly going to be a payoff, like taking a detour like that. And there wasn't, you know. I mean, other than Moff Gideon tying up loose ends, but it felt a little bit like an Andor episode, because Dr. Pershing is just kind of like living life, and he's like working in that like cubicle thing. And I nerd out over all the little like analog tech that they like. Andor was filled with it. That episode was filled with it. I just nerd out over it. I love all the analog tech in Star Wars. But yeah, I think I enjoyed the episode. I would watch it again, but it definitely was like I feel a little bit different about it now that I realize there wasn't really a payoff that we can see in this season. Now, how it plays into the larger Thrawn thing, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't know that it will. It seems like a weird thing to like, oh, hey, remember Dr. Pershing? Like it's just,
They like the
scrambled egg.
They like the twist of she's actually evil and look at what she's on the inside, and then you have like her come back up once or twice in the series, but they're still in these minor little sabotage roles, and it's like, no, make her a second in command under Gideon, make her a little bit bigger, give her more agency instead of just hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So
real quick, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna navigate us into something else because eventually I want to talk about the cameos because there are a good amount of cameos this season, including some that you might not you guys, but our viewers might not even realize were cameos.
I probably didn't either.
Yeah. So real quick, I just wanted to highlight what would you say was your favorite episode of this season? Because there's to me some very notable moments or episodes that were even kind of you could pull out and let it just be its own thing, like with Gideon Shard and that whole thing,
For me, it was the episode The Pirate. I loved that episode from start to finish. I think I watched that one 3 times, not quite in a row, but within like the first day it came out, we watched it twice, and I think I watched it once more. I love space battles, ship battles, like dogfighting, like love it. So the whole aerial fight with Mando and Bo-Katan while all the Mandos were dropping down below, and knowing what the gauntlet fighters that she has, it's meant to drop troops. When they dropped, when there's that shot of like the camera like follows them down, I was like, when it happened, I was like, what? Like I was very into the episode, and then like the whole the episode opens with that rebel base. It's like a spaceport, and then they cameoed a very beloved character from Rebels, Zeb Aurelios, the big dude. He's like the CGI. He looks like kind of like a cat person. Oh man, I was a happy nerd on that episode.
That description is now evading my memory. I don't know why I'm not like picturing it in my mind.
He's like purple, like he's got stripes. So Carson Teva's there, and he picks up a phone call, and Grief Karga is like Carl Weathers' character is like, "Hey, we need help," and he's like, "Well, you're outside of the jurisdiction." And then he ultimately decides to go, and there's this big dude that walks up behind him, and he's like, "You seriously gonna go?" He's like, "Good luck, you're gonna need it," And I was very happy.
That's a cameo I did not realize was a cameo.
Oh, so, dude, it was a cameo. Yeah.
Brian, what was your favorite episode?
Might sound basic, but I like the finale. I like the battle, when it all came through and how it all came together. Especially I like that the end battle with Moff Gideon, because it's what everyone was waiting for at the end, because he for a while was that was like the cockroach that they could never get rid of.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like, as much as I like the finale, it's not that I disliked it, but to me, I just felt like I enjoyed the journey rather than the culmination. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe my favorite might have been the Jack Black and Christopher Lloyd episode.
Really?
I liked it a lot because I don't know, I'm not a noir guy, but I definitely liked the little bit of the detective.
Yeah, no, I think I loved that element of that episode. For me, it was
go ahead, keep going.
No, I don't want to. You describe why you loved the episode first, because I would interrupted you, and then I'll talk about it.
I think the thing that really solidified it, apart from that, I mean, you're watching it, and all of a sudden, I knew that Christopher Lloyd was in this season, mm-hmm. but I didn't know Jack Black was going to be, and I didn't recognize Lizzo at first, and I only found that out later. But I'm like, is this Jack Black in Star Wars?
Yeah.
So that was fun, and then they get to the droid bar. And the droid bartender and his little speech about like how they don't want to be shut down. They just are looking for life. Like they just want to be let to live. and have a purpose. And I'm like, that's a really good perspective because the droids are undersold, and yet they're also so important to the overall story of really any of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah. Yeah. So in regards to the whole like Lizzo Jack Black thing,
I didn't realize it was Lizzo until Jeff said it's Lizzo.
yeah. So I actually didn't I knew that Lizzo was there are certain stigmas about her that people talk about. I would not have been able to point her out in a crowd though. What I mean is there's people that talk about her weight and things like that. So I just knew that she was a larger girl. But I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to point her out. So for me, all I was saying was, wow, this girl cannot act. And it was distracting. And I felt like Jack Black was carrying that whole, like, any scenes they had together, I felt like he was carrying them. Now,
Absolutely.
I would have preferred Jack Black. Lauren and I were just talking about this today. I would have preferred Jack Black to have played not Jack Black, a la the character Carl Denham he plays in King Kong, where he's he's playing a different character. It would have been nice to see that, but I have a massive soft spot for Jack Black, so his whole Jack Black shtick didn't really bother me as much. I think that they're kind of trying to do like a contrasty kind of thing. That episode felt like it needed to be in the middle of the season, though. That's the only thing I will say. It felt a little like that the Mandalore taking Mandalore back is happening, and so I just felt like it would have been nice to have just jumped right into that, because that's what people are here to see, but the whole detective thing, all of that, the slightly cyberpunk feel of like the lower levels when they're like going around, loved all of that. Loved seeing all the old battle droids, all of that. Loved it. So I would say 80% of the episode I really did like. It was the Lizzo stuff that for me just it just felt like a weird thing to put in Star Wars, because I wouldn't look at Lizzo and be like, the fans are gonna love this, I thought the season was great. I just to me, it's like, I think one of the reasons why I love The Mandalorian is because it's like, it hits all the right notes for me of like, I loved Boba Fett as a kid, still do, but just imagining stuff and playing with my action figures with my buddies and just imagining different things, and we'd always swap stories of like different things we read about that Boba Fett could do or other people, and it was like swap stories in the playground and all these epic, grandiose things. It just, I think they really knocked it out of the park, especially with that season finale of just the scale of like seeing all those Mandos flying towards all of those like jet troopers, and the armor's got her big old hammer and tongs out, and Bo-Katan's brandishing the dark saber, and it's just this like, oh, it was great. Yeah, I loved it.
We've mentioned like some of those cameos, and we haven't talked about nearly as much about Christopher Lloyd, even though like he's old now, and it's he still has his acting there, but it's like you can tell he's
it shows.
So like I would love to talk about
like
it more,
that
but
he
I
had
guess
a
I don't
shout
have a
out
lot.
to Count Dooku.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked that.
I did like too. I liked his whole motivation, like still being a separatist, and like you can call it Empire, you can call it New Republic, whatever. I feel like I'm on the right side, and I've always been on the right side, and I'm too old to change that now.
Yeah. That was really interesting. Yeah, I liked that.
So, Brian, here's a cameo you did recognize, I'm sure, is having Tim Meadows on there from SNL fame as the guy in Coruscant that what was his name, the pilot that he was reporting
Carson
to?
Teva.
Yeah,
Carson Teva.
So with him, I'll admit I was paying attention, but I was loading my dishwasher, and I was like, "Is that Tim Meadows?" And I went and I rewound it back. I'm like, Tim Meadows is in this, I recognize the voice before anything else.
Yeah,
And
he's
sure,
great.
he
Yeah.
plays a character, but when they introduce him in the most Tim Meadows way as possible with the droid, like, all right, don't just put that anywhere. And the droid just drops it and he gives it like the Tim Meadows upset look. Like,
Uh-huh.
that is very Tim Meadows
Yeah.
y humor.
Yeah.
I think Star Wars has gotten to the point where they can pretty much get any big name cameos. And you're like, wait, that person's in it? Like, like
Uh-huh.
with Obi-Wan. That Zach Braff is in this? Like it's
Oh
really weird.
yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I always like cameos that are more not quite on the nose. So like the Zach Braff voice, and then in The Force Awakens, the stormtrooper that gets mind controlled by Rey is Daniel Craig. Like
Yeah.
in the actual
Yeah.
armor. That's the kind of cameo I love, where you're like, is that what I think it is? Yeah.
Or Simon Pegg in the same movie as the Junker at the beginning
Oh
with
yeah,
Rey.
Uncle Plutt. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's the name.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Love it.
Yep.
Also, here's a question: was Pedro Pascal ever actually there? Because he didn't have to be ever.
No. So what he basically said in the first season, I was listening to an interview with him a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
Said in the first season, yes, he was in it the majority of the time, except for that big action sequences. Then in the second season, it was like 50-50. They were trying to figure out what they could get away with. And then by this season, it was the two stunt performers doing, I think, all of it, if I'm not mistaken, which is a good gig for
I wonder
him.
if that's because he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if he was filming Last of Us at the same time. Like,
He
is that
was,
possibly
yeah.
it?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that. Yeah, so I would imagine they'll do something a little different for the next season, maybe. I don't know.
Wait, is there another season, or is this it? Or is this it?
No. There's going to be an actual another one.
Okay.
But I think it's gonna. I think it, as was the case with Mando season 1 through 3, he was roping other people into his whatever. And I think it's going to be the reverse, because Ahsoka's really going to kick off the new era of this quote unquote Mandoverse, of all these interconnected stories. And I think that storyline is going to be the main storyline now, and that they're going to rope Mando back in to the larger arc of I'm so excited, guys. Oh my gosh. You have no idea how excited I am for the Ahsoka series. Like, so excited.
See, and I really like this time frame in the Star Wars universe, because you have the First Order pop up, but yet they're the big heavy, but yet the New Republic is still like the Republic, yet they're rebels in a way. So it's like, how does this dynamic happen? I would love to see that explored, of how the First Order became so big while not actually being in control, but they're very much in control.
Right. Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to be doing these stories, because we can't get too close to the original trilogy, because I mean they brought in Mark Hamill, but it takes a lot of CGI to make him look 40 years younger, and Carrie Fisher's gone, and Harrison Ford doesn't care about Star Wars anymore, so it's like you can't really get close to those original guys anymore.
Well, I think that I think because they're gonna do a big movie to kind of culminate all of this once this is all done. I think that's when they will bring in the original trilogy people back into the fold, of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia. How they do that, man, I have no idea. But that's my guess. I mean, if you're gonna do basically the episodes 7, 8, 9 that people really wanted, that's how you would do it.
That's nerve-wracking.
Are they gonna? I've heard rumors that they're
as like a human being looking at technology, because once you open that door where it's like, we are bringing back Carrie Fisher because we've got her essence here, it's like, well, now you can do anything. You can have a movie starring Clark Gable and The Rock.
Right.
You can do whatever you want once that floodgate is open.
And that's why the Screen Actors Guild is on strike right now. So among other reasons, but yeah. So what were you going to say, Brian?
What was I going to say?
I was
no, just like
okay. I was going to try and jog your memory, but you're
good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I've heard rumors that they're gonna try to just redo 7, 8, 9 and pretend they didn't happen.
No, dude, that's not happening.
You
Because
can
like, that would mess up
retcon.
the timeline of all these things.
Yeah, you can retcon, but you can't put the pieces back in the box.
Right, yeah. So I think
Yeah.
everything. I mean, it's really just going to be a case of what happened with the prequels. The prequels were met. What I never had an issue with the prequels. I could see the flaws, but I just really enjoy Star Wars. I love that, just that whole genre. I call it a genre. So, but I got why people didn't like them. But then the Clone Wars came out
Mhm.
and really helped flesh out stuff that the prequel trilogy failed to do. And as a result, the fruit that was yielded from that is that it really helped to support and lift up and fill in the gaps of the prequels. And I honestly think the same thing's going to happen with the sequels. I mean, obviously there are more grievous errors in those movies, but I think that's just what's going to happen. Just given enough time, you know, I think that people will warm to them just like they did the prequels. But
Yeah, I mean,
that's just what I think.
look at the hate of the prequels, followed by the excitement people had for Hayden Christensen being announced to come back as Vader.
Yep,
And
exactly.
it's the like, remember you loved this. This was nostalgia, like Disney being
Yeah.
like, yeah, remember this? You remember this? This was good. You like this, remember? And like, no, I didn't like it. No, you did. No, I'm pretty
Don't
sure you
remember
did.
how much you loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a second here and brag about. Okay, I actually got to be in the Star Wars nerd in a group of people last weekend.
Woo, go
So is that,
Brian.
Yeah, I was at my girlfriend's big family reunion to do every year, and one of her cousins, her husband, they bought their kids like the super like $160 each lightsabers that like have the sound effects and all that kind of stuff, and like their kids were playing with them and all that. And somebody said like I forget what name they said. They said the wrong name. Like, oh yeah, what was the guy? The robot thing had four of them, and he said I forget what he said the wrong name. I'm like, oh, you mean General Grievous? I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I got to be the one who knew the name
Nice.
in that group of people.
Nice. It
Yeah,
feels
I
good.
did mean
It
that.
feels good. Don't get drunk with
yeah.
power, but it feels good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
then I took the lightsaber-
kids, I can spell Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
I don't even have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, then I took the lightsaber and I beheaded everybody.
Yeah, there we go. That'll show him.
Easy there, Anakin. I don't know. I don't know why I was thinking about that the other night, but like just thinking about. Oh, that's what I was thinking about. Like, I want to see a fan dub of like how George Lucas always goes back to those originals. Like, I'm going to tweak it still, and so he added Hayden Christensen as the Force Ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi, and
Yeah.
I just want to see like him pop up as a Force Ghost, and then the camera pans to the side. And there's all the Force kids that he brutally murdered just standing there like, really?
Jeez.
This guy gets to be here with us?
That's dark.
I just want them all to like just be standing there like ready to pounce.
Yeah.
I saw a meme once when it was that, and it was old Obi-Wan looking over saying, "How did you figure out how to be young as a ghost?"
Yeah, tell me your secret. Yeah. Oh, speaking
It's a secret
of
a Jedi wouldn't tell you.
Speaking of the prequels, in the episode called The Foundling, Grogu has a flashback of Order 66 in the Jedi Order, and we finally find out who saves him from the Jedi Order, and it is none other than Jar Jar Binks actor Ahmed Best. And man, if anybody knows, I'll briefly just explain what happened to that guy.
Yeah.
Like, he got ridiculed so much because of that movie, playing Jar Jar, that went into a massive depression and was suicidal and was on the verge of. He got onto the bridge, Brooklyn Bridge, I think, and he was going to jump off and just commit suicide. And then a gust of wind came, and he caught himself. He grabbed, and he realized in that moment, I still want to live. But man, I got so teary-eyed when I saw him. Like, they gave him such a good role. And just the significance of that and the redemption, like between him and Hayden Christensen in the Star Wars fandom, like I just was
Wasn't it Jake Lloyd also got bullied?
yeah. So we
gave up acting completely.
Yeah. We got to see him come back, man. That's what we got to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, like knowing how they retconned that and reached out to Ahmed Best, that I'm sure that they have to Jake Lloyd too. I would
Yeah.
not be surprised, or I would be surprised if they hadn't. And
Yeah.
I would just imagine that Jake
Yeah.
Lloyd, when you're a kid, it's different as an adult, but even then, like it drove an adult to want to kill himself.
Oh,
Imagine
man.
what it does to some poor
Yeah.
kid.
So, yes.
And like all of his classmates, because like that's what he talked about too.
Yeah.
All of his classmates, they just bring
Oh,
up the lines from the
horrible.
movie.
Yeah. And so, yeah, anybody, if you have a couple of minutes, I would go into YouTube and just look up Ahmed Best suicide story, and like he tells it, and it's just like, oh man, it's totally like, yeah, it's really good. So,
and I know that our fans aren't that way, but in case anyone's listening, don't be that kind of fan. Don't be the kind of football fan that if a player gets injured, you're like, I'm gonna send you death threats for some reason because my fantasy team's failing. Like, don't be that. That doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, no,
Just
it doesn't.
you don't own them.
And I think that's why, like with like any of the actors that people don't like in Star Wars, whether it was oh man, what's her name? I can't remember, who plays Rose Tico in The Last Jedi, and others, like, be kind, man. Like they're literally hired. Like, do you know how much of a dream it was for these people to be in Star Wars, regardless of who they play? And then people just so mean, man. And I'm like, look, I didn't care for Reva's character. I thought she was pointless in Obi-Wan Kenobi. I felt like it should have been more centered on Obi-Wan and Vader, and that's it. But and a lot of people feel that way. However, to go and like treat her with disrespect because she was hired to do a job, like, it's just like,
and they took it to a racial point too.
Yeah, and just, so for me, it's like just insane. I'm like, as if there's no black people in Star Wars. There are, and actually, as a matter of fact, there's some of people's favorite characters. So
yeah,
I just don't.
Lando Calrissian, he's been black people for 40 years.
Come on, man. Captain Smooth. Yeah, absolutely. So
was Lando the first one? I don't think there was any in the original.
Yeah, I think he was the first like major character that was. Yeah. So
I mean, if you don't count James Earl Jones as Vader.
That's true. Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
But
hey, like Michael Caine 30, 40 years ago made Jaws 4 and went on record saying, like, I've never even seen the film and I've heard it's terrible, but I've seen the house that film built and it's lovely. Like, he did it just for the money, guys. And no one was like, hey, Michael Caine, you ruined my favorite franchise. Like, come on. We don't need people do this for money. That's their job. Right. And they don't always have control over what they say in the movie or their lines or how they're even supposed to act it. They do what they're told, and they try and make art, and they try and make it as good as they can.
Yeah. So my question, really quick, do you guys think that Moff Gideon is really dead?
He's dead unless they need him to come back for money reasons.
What a cop-out answer, Brian. Commit.
True. Okay, yes, I'll say he's dead, but I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him back.
Yeah, because he's cloned. Like
you see all those clones,
and like he's had multiple cloning facilities. So to assume that those are the only clones, I'm just like, I think if he comes back, he will be a clone. Unless that was somehow a really good clone of Moff Gideon, and he is really a cockroach that won't die. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do with that. I
mean, this is the same universe where somehow Palpatine returned. So
yeah, man.
And on that note, and completely unrelated, for some reason, I'm just recommending, if you haven't seen it, go watch The Prestige. I don't know why I'm saying that, but just go really watch the movie.
Though.
It's so good. It's top notch.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get something like that with Moff Gideon. But because I honestly really do love the idea of a Thrawn Moff Gideon tension. I think that would be really interesting. Thrawn is like scary smart, and I'm really excited to see him in Ahsoka. That's gonna be so good.
I'm excited too.
So
should be awesome.
Good. If you guys have not watched Rebels, if people listening have not watched Rebels, I strongly recommend you do it because it actually is really good. and that'll fill you in on the backstory, because Dave Filoni has actually very affectionately called Ahsoka Rebels season 5. So you can watch Rebels 1 through 4. It's actually got some really good Star Wars storytelling in it. So there we go.
Well, there you go.
Nice.
There's unofficial plug. Hashtag not sponsored. But let's go ahead and get into trivia real quick, and then we'll say goodbye to our good buddy and say goodbye to all of you. So last week we had actually 2 trivia questions. So we talked about TV shows from the 1970s, and so one of them was Happy Days, and showrunner was Gary Marshall, and so his sister his daughter. Anyway, someone who's related to him, Penny Marshall, was the first woman director who directed a blockbuster movie that made over $100 million. And what was that movie directed by Penny Marshall? Jeff, do you know?
Oh my gosh, no.
It was Big with Tom Hanks.
That's a great movie.
It is a good movie. It's a little creepy now, like some of the stuff they included.
Yeah, fair point.
Ends up being that way, but like the childlikeness of Tom Hanks, that was good.
Yes, I concur.
And Brian had a question as well, so we did a double whammy last week. Brian, what was your trivia question?
My trivia question was, we talked about the Brady Bunch Variety Hour and how there was one member of the cast who did not come back for that, and who didn't, and that was Eve Plum, who played Jan Brady, decided not to return for the Variety Hour.
So did Tiger the dog. Actually, I might have made that joke when you asked that question last week. There's a good chance. All right, this week's trivia, Jeff, you got it? Take it away.
I do, and I'm going to do this very quickly because we're running out of time. What is the name of the big Mandalorian who goes out in a blaze of glory at the end of episode 7, The Spies? So if anybody remembers, the big guy, he's got blue armor, goes out in a blaze of glory, just lays waste. What is his name? And then a bonus question, what other famous Mandalorian is he descended from?
Awesome beast-like character. Gave me Halo Reach vibes.
Big time. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But all right, so there's that, and his name is not Lizzo. So if that was your question, if that was your
not Lizzo.
answer, that's not it. No, I'm sorry. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. 6 times, and that's still not enough. I look forward to our next time.
We're going to do Ahsoka next. That's what's coming.
We're doing it.
Yep.
Boom, baby. All right, well, until Ahsoka comes out, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.